The graduation party should have been the most glorious moment of my life. After all, at 20-2, I had not only won the diploma with effort, but also built a profitable business from scratch, while many of my age still depended on their parents' allowance. The farm in Solmaki was impeccable, such as the departure of a decoration catalogue, white chairs aligned under warm lights, tables covered with blue towels bought from Leroy Merlin, the smell of roasted chicken and gratin with cheese hovering in the air. They were all there, relatives I hadn't seen for years, college colleagues, neighbors, even my former Daesh coach Viktor Petrovich, who greeted me with a firm hand grip. For the first time, I felt that each sleepless night, every weekend sacrificed and every party I let go were worth it. But a toast was enough for everything to crumble. My brother, I warned, with that arrogant way of those who think it is the center of attention, took the microphone. I expected a compliment, a memory of childhood, anything that sounded like affection. Instead, he lifted the glass and loaned Ted with a resounding voice, "Let's toast to our failure of family, which, by miracle, managed to graduate." The silence that followed was sharp. Some laughed, embarrassed, others froze, not knowing how to react. My mother, next to the barbecue, just waved her hand, as if to say, "Oh, it's Alexei, always playful." I forced a smile, but inside I relived every detail of those years when I worked late, he jumped on jobs, lived with empty promises and still had the face of borrowed money to pay the rent. That was not a joke. It was a cruel reminder. For him, I would always be the lucky youngest, whose success was merely chance, no matter how much I his shirt. That night I swallowed my anger, cut the cake and thanked the guests as if nothing had happened. But when the party ended and I felt alone in my apartment on the outskirts, looking at the lighted posts through the window, a certainty settled. I couldn't stand to play the savior of a brother who only knew how to humiliate me. 3 days later, Alexei's world turned upside down. Without warning, I blocked all the operations of the corporate account of his revolutionary startup, the same one that, according to him, would be the next unicorn, but in practice was just another free well of apology and deadlines. I ended the financing, dismissed the newly freelance team from Novosibirsk and let him face the consequences on his own. When he woke up, he must have taken a scare, blocked letters, paralyzed project, bank requiring resolution of a corporate conflict. The calls started early, 8:12 a.m., 8:14 a.m., 8:17 a.m. all fell into the mailbox. In voice messages, his voice trembled between fury and despair. "Why did you block the bill? Why did the developers stop? Why is the site down?" He accused me of exaggeration, as if I were the villain of the story. I didn't answer. To feel, for the first time, the weight of his own choices. At 9:30 a.m., it was my mother's turn to call. I already knew what would come. Alexei had running whimpering to her. "He is devastated, son. You need to talk. This project is the work of a whole year." I spoke the truth, dry and straightforward, no longer finance who treated me as a joke in public. She, of course, minimized, but it was just a joke. You know how it is. When I didn't give up, your tone changed. "You're punishing the whole family. It's not just him who will suffer." That phrase hurt more than Alexei's toast. It was not a defense, it was a veiled charge. I should continue in my role as obedient smaller brother, supporting the irresponsible, no matter how much he deserved it. At noon, I made the final decision. I went to the rented apartment that Alexei shared with his wife, Natalia A.C. At the age of modest in a periphery building, whose rent I paid for 14 months, since he swore that this time it would work. I entered without warning. He opened the door with dark circles, disheveled hair, wrinkled shirt. Natalia, sitting on the couch with the notebook surrounded by papers, seemed to try to save the leftover the wreck. "I won't sit down," he said. "From next month, the rent is your problem." The silence that followed was eloquent. He babbled lame excuses. "It was just a joke. You're exaggerating. In the end, you threw the letter from guilt. You're abandoning your family." I didn't argue. I just turned my back and leaves. On the way to the car, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel remorse. Only a deep relief, as if finally dropped a burden that had been carrying for years. For the first time, the choice was mine and I wouldn't go back. If Alexei wanted to treat my success as luck, to learn to deal with failure alone. After all, life is not just made of empty gifts. It is made of choices. And I had done mine. But if he thought it would end there, he was roundly mistaken. The following week, my parents called an undeniable invitation, a family dinner. Everyone should be present, they said, with a tone that pretended lightness, but sounded like a military order. They did not mention that my father had already talked to Alexei. And when the truth came to light, the shock was not just his. It was everyone. I knew what I waited for me. The scene was predictable as a cheap soap opera script. They would minimize what he did, they would call me exaggerated and try to convince me to defrost the bill and back to playing his apartment. But a part of me wanted to see how far they would go out. When I arrived, the table was already put in excessive care. My mother had surpassed golden roasted chicken, puree of potatoes drowned in sauce, her garlic toast that perfumed the whole house. The dining room light was too strong, as if we were in a court. My father, at the headboard, was holding a glass of tea with lemon and looked more serious than ever. Alexei and his wife, Natalia, were already sitting, whispering, but straightened when they saw me. The first 20 minutes were of small conversation. My mother asked about my work, then jumped to the neighbors. My father mentioned a leak on the garage roof. Alexei tried a forced joke about traffic on Yarosheva, but the air was already heavy, as before a storm. Until my mother dropped the fork and released, looking at me, "We can't let little misunderstandings become big problems." I didn't say my name, but I didn't need to. He kept talking about how short life is to keep grudge, how everyone errs when they try to play. Before I could decide how to answer, my dad hit the spoon on the table with a calculated snap, turned to Alexei and said, "You should have thought before opening your mouth on that party. He embarrassed you in front of everyone, and you were lucky for him to have only taken off his money." The room froze. Alexei looked at his father as if he didn't recognize him. My mother widened her eyes, as if he had betrayed the team. Natalia lowered her head, immovable. Alexei tried to recompose herself, leaning against the chair. "It was a joke. Ilya takes everything very seriously. He knows I didn't mean any of that." My father did not let it end. Hiding behind jokes is the oldest trick in the world. If you respected your brother, you would have apologized at the time, instead of waiting until you cut your allowance. It didn't shouted, but the tone left no room for replica. My mother interfered, leaning forward as if she didn't believe what she heard. "As soon as brothers are. Ilya knew it was a joke and is making a storm in a glass of water." Turned to me. "You went too far," I warned, feeling the support, crossed his arms and let her fight for him. "In sir." So moment, even smiled. Everything went according to the plan, less my father's unexpected position. I didn't answer. It was not worth it. They had already decided. The problem was me, because I refused to continue in my role of Salvador. So I pulled the plate away, got up and said I wouldn't justify me again. As he walked to the door, the silence in the room was so dense that he could cut with a knife. I thought it was the end. That would give up after the scene. But I underestimated their determination. 2 days later, Alexei and my mother came together for a blow I didn't see coming. A calculated play to force me to give in. And that's when the situation came out of control. Upon returning from a meeting with an investor, I saw a large gazelle stop in front of my building, with the rear open. I thought some neighbor was finally moving. The third-floor couple threatened to go to Sochi for months. But when I approached, the stomach rolled. Alexei was standing on the back of the truck, giving the porters as if he owned the piece. Natalia held a cardboard box with the word kitchen written by hand, with that tense smile of those who try to pretend that everything is fine. I approached slowly. He saw me and smiled, like a surprise party. "Perfect, you arrived on time. Let's start unloading." I looked at him. "Download where?" He pointed to my apartment. "Your second room has been empty since you changed. Will be a while, until we accommodate." "No," he said, without changing his voice. "Once it was enough." He laughed, as if I was playing, and turned to the porters. "They can take it." I stayed at the entrance of the building. "No. You won't come in." Natalia exchanged the placebox and started talking fast. The owner did not renew the contract suddenly. We did not have time to get somewhere else. It is just for a short time, nor need registration. We are family. That's when I saw, behind her, my mother's car parked across the street. She was leaning against the hood, arms crossed, sunglasses, watching everything as a general who already knows she won. It was not despair. It was strategy. I turned to Alexei. This won't happen. He tried to appeal. You are cruel. We have a son, it doesn't deserve to stay on the street. They have other relatives. And if they don't, maybe that says something about how people treat. My mother approached, the sharp voice like a blade. You are turning your back on your own blood. If you let them leave today, you will regret more than you think. I replied that my only regret was that I let everything go so far. Then I looked at the porters. If you get anything out of this truck, it comes back everything from where it came. For him. They looked at each other. One of them asked Base if it would not be better to come back. Alexei cursed. Natalia stared at the floor. After a long silence, he nodded. They collected everything. My mother said nothing when she got back to the car, but her gaze promised, that was not over. I thought it was the end. Who would grumble and get another sofa to sleep? But that night, at 11 p.m., a message has arrived on Telegram, you will still regret it. I didn't answer. 2 days later, I understood what he meant. And it wasn't about money. It was personal. Very personal. I woke up with my cell phone vibrating non-stop. I thought it was a job, a problem with a customer, a supplier. But when I saw the flood of notifications, the blood froze. They were not emails. It was not work. They were social networks. Dozens of lost calls, a mountain of private messages and over 100 markings. People with whom I had not spoken for years sent prints. Alexei had taken the war to the public. At VK, he posted as if it were a bad soap opera episode. My younger brother kicked me home with my wife and son when we had nowhere to go. He painted me like a cold monster, an ambitious selfish. What forgot his roots as soon as the money appeared. Every inconvenient detail was carefully omitted. Not a word about the startup that I played. Not a word about the year I paid their rent. Not a word about the Gazelle blow. And of course, not even a syllable about how he humiliated me in front of everyone on my own birthday. The post began to be shared. When he already had almost 60,000 views, and the comments had become a cheap moralist market. Some, the neutrals, sensed that there was something wrong. Others, family friends, old Dacia neighbors, distant relatives that barely remembered, left messages like, family does not abandon, blood is worth more than money. But what hurt most were the reactions of former schoolmakers, people who knew nothing of my current life, but clearly delighted in the drama. Things like, it seems that money changes people. I didn't think you were that way. Until midfield, my mother had left 3 audios on WhatsApp, each more furious than the previous one. She didn't ask if anything that was true. The story itself didn't interest her. What bothered her was just the fact that it ashamed the family before the acquaintances and that I was forced to fix everything. It was at that moment that I decided, enough to let Alexei control the narrative. The next morning I sent a message, find myself at noon. When he entered, with that air of superiority from those who have already been receiving my apologies, I was sitting at the kitchen table, with a black paste in front of me. Inside, bank statements, loan contracts, transfer vouchers, each payment of that damn income, each investment in the startup, every expense I had covered. I didn't shouted. I didn't make speeches. I just pushed the folder toward him and said, if this post is not erased until the end of the day, and if there is no public denial, I will send copies of these documents to everyone who shared, relatives, friends, investors, everyone. He smiled, as if to say, you will not have courage. But then I took the cell phone and showed the ready draft of the message, with the scans of the attached vouchers. His face changed. Self-confidence has evaporated. That same night, the post disappeared from VK. Without a word. No excuses, no explanation. I thought it was the end, that we had finally come to the point where he would retreat. I was wrong. Because the following week I was the one who made the movement that Alexei did not expect. A movement that not only closed that chapter but locked the door behind him forever. 7 days passed without a single sign of my brother. No connection, no message, not even your usual posts ever. Silence was unnatural, like heavy air before a storm. I knew him well enough to know, either he was bad with life, or prepared a counterattack in silence. But for the first time it didn't matter anymore. I had already decided what to do. That Friday morning, I was sitting at a lawyer's office on Baumannah Street, signing the latest documents to invest in my friend Kirill's project. We still met in the second year of college. Kirill was not the type who begged for attention or made a victim when things were difficult. Over the past 2 years, he had built a technological platform with his own sweat, working on night shifts in a marketplace deposit-to-play development. Every time we talked, he talked about work, not drama or self-pity. A few months earlier, he asked me if I wanted to be his partner. At the time, I refused. My money was tied to Alexei's project. Now my resources were free. And I wanted to invest where they would really make a difference. When the ink dried in the convertible loan agreement, I felt you. Calmly, I haven't tried for months. The same day, I called my father and asked if he wanted to have a coffee. We sat near the window in a Ponchiki coffee shop, and slid the agreement signed toward him. He read carefully, kept the paper and said only, "Well, at least that goes to those who deserve it." Until the end of the day, my mother learned of the news. Probably my father told. And of course Alexei learned too. Soon she sent me 2 straight audios, both with the same content. I was humiliating my brother, supporting a stranger instead of helping him to rise. He called me a grudge and said I was exposing Alexei like an idiot before the whole family. An hour later, a message came, "Wow. It looks like you really buried the knife." I didn't answer. That night, sitting in my apartment, looking at the contract with the name of Kirill, I understood something I should have understood years ago. Blood is not enough. You can be relative and yet not family. And when this is clear, there is no return. For the first time, I accepted this definitively. Almost a month had passed since I left my brother's rented apartment, since I put an end and said, "It's over." The following weeks were different, as if finally got rid of a background noise that, without realizing it, has always been present in my life. No desperate phone calls asking for help. No ironic message. No attempt to press my conscience through my mother. Kirill's project advanced faster than we both expected. We just finished the beta tests, and the feedbacks were enough to schedule a meeting with a large investment fund. For the first time in a long time, each rubles and every hour invested seemed to be worth it. Until, on Tuesday morning, a message of an unknown number arrived. "Check your mailbox. You'll find it interesting. L." I had no idea who was L. No profile photo, no context. But I went down to the hall of the building, and there was a thick envelope, without sender, inside my box. Inside, prints of a Alexei conversation with 2 of my former business contacts. The more I read, the slower the pages turned. My brother was trying to convince private investors to relaunch the project we once developed together. But in his version, the idea was 100% of yours. My name had been erased from all the documents. He was to the point of claiming that he himself had developed and funded the first prototypes, the same ones I had paid and commissioned through my contacts. Worse, attached the original sketches. My intellectual property. I didn't know who it was L, but the fact that those roles came to me said a lot. Someone from the circle near Alexei, probably. Someone who finally tired of seeing him cut ways and throw others into the mud. I didn't waste time. On the same day, I sent the prints to my lawyer for an encrypted messenger and made 2 calls, one for each investor he had contacted. I told the whole story, the real origin of the project, who paid why, and the fact that those prototypes were mine. By the end of the week, investors cancelled the meeting with Alexei and froze any negotiations. I thought he would call furious. Did not call. Instead, who called was my mother. "Your voice has already started sharp." He accused me of destroying my brother's future, of ending him just when he was in the bottom of the well. He didn't ask if it was true. The details didn't interest her. What bothered her was just one thing: I had prevented him to cling to another float. I answered. This is what happens when you burn all the bridges, and then try to steal the tablets of others to build yours. The following Monday, Kirill and I closed the first cycle of estimations. The same ones that once heard I Alexed with admiration looks now put their money where the results spoke louder than promises. That night I served a glass of wine and sat at the window, watching the lighted city. It was then that a simple truth crystallized: my older brother had not changed. It would not even change. The only difference now was that he could no longer get enough to drag me back to his games. And I didn't intend to give you that chance. The story, however, is far from ending. Stay with us.